What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the newest episode of the Believe in Oregon podcast. I'm Zachary Neal, my co-host over there, Jonathan Stewart. Jay Stu, what's up, man? How we doing?
Good, man. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. We're in the swing of things now. It's fully football season. I think we're both getting used to I love the constructs of a season, like you get in a routine. You feel that way as well?
Yeah, the routine is so good. I mean, especially, understanding what's at stake football wise, as far
Yeah.
as how good teams are and who do you want to watch and how does that alter your responsibilities as an adult with kids
Mhm.
and all the things that really matter.
Yeah.
Uh, but no, we're getting onto a nice little rhythm. Got
Yeah.
soccer on Saturday and cheerleading. So
It's a lot.
and football. So we got to figure all that out. And I have like a meet and greet around like 6 o'clock. So
Yeah.
definitely gonna have to figure out how I'm gonna watch the game while talking to people.
Yeah, I kind of want to. This is a good segue. I want to start this week's show out with a bit of a vibe check because we're in it now. I mean, college football, NFL, everything's returned. You've got a lot of things going on, coaching, multiple shows you're filming. I'm very low on sleep, obviously, with the little one and everything. How are we doing? You think how's your sanity holding up?
Oh, my sanity's great. I mean, at the end of the day, who has it better than us?
Very
Right?
true.
Right now we're talking about football and
Yeah.
we're talking about, things that make our lives, better when it's centered around football.
Yeah.
But no, it's a lot. And I think we're only our age once.
Mhm.
We're only gonna be able to experience these teams once the way they are. And we get an opportunity to be a voice um, for the Duck Nation, Panther Nation for myself,
Mhm.
being a part of the football world as we speak. And I would rather not be doing anything else.
Yeah, it's funny. People always I've got asked a lot of times, like, how do you like your job? Like, do you like what you do? It's like, I get paid to have an opinion on a
Yeah.
sport, on a literal game, like something I'd be watching in my free time anyway. People pay me to have an opinion and listen to me talk about it. Like, yeah, there's nothing in the world I would rather be doing. So
Right.
good, good. Vibe check is good early on. I like where we're at. This is gonna be a good episode. Quick update.
Don't mind my water.
That's a massive water can. I hope is that
Yeah,
one of those
hydrated
per day? Is that what you're doing?
too.
2 per day, man.
Yeah,
That's impressive. I
it's
need
a
to
lot
drink
of
more water
lot
then.
of water has to go into this body. You see that?
Yeah, that's an athlete right there. Quick update from practice and watching Dan Lanning's press conference, that was last night on Monday night. Obviously, I'm not going in person right now. I won't be at practice in person or these interviews for probably a couple more weeks after the bye week is what I'm planning, kind of my pseudo paternity leave while I just work, but work from home. But from the sounds of it, this offensive line thing is going to be something. Listening to Lanning last night at his press conference, I don't know if you got a chance to hear it, but he said, quote, "We will continue to work to figure out what's the best group, knowing that it might not just be one group that plays along the offensive line for us. Until we get people healthy, it may continue to look different." It should be noted that apparently Matthew Bedford played more today in practice than we saw last week, but it is still kind of a waiting game until he returns. So, those are just a little bit of updates from what we've seen in the past couple days since we talked last. I don't know. I'm not concerned about the offensive line, like not super concerned. I'm a little bit concerned, but it'll be interesting to see how they do this until they get fully healthy.
Yeah. Who else outside of Bedford is there that's missing from the offensive line?
Nobody, but
Okay.
because Bedford's gone, it's like led them to shuffle everything around. I don't know, they could put Poncho just at center and put Nishad Strother at right guard and leave everything else the same. But for whatever reason, I mean, they know more and have seen more than me or you have. They don't
Mm-hmm.
like that, and they kind of are shuffling things around to avoid doing that. But I don't know. Like we said on Sunday, there was 11 different personnel groupings with this offensive line on Saturday. So they're obviously throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks and trying to see what works for them.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we get this figured out now. I guess the good thing the good thing here is we're playing teams that we should beat.
Yeah, it's happening early in the season.
Yeah, so that is something that happens in football where you do have to go into a situation of unknowns as far as this
Mhm.
offensive line. We're speaking of the unknowns where how are they going to play together without JPJ? Like that clearly he was a very huge component to all this,
Yeah,
right? To the
yeah,
success of Oregon last year. Um, and you don't know what you don't know. And right now they're figuring it out. And the good thing is we have teams that we should beat
yeah,
in the midst of it all. 'Cause I think if we figure it out before Ohio State, we should be in good
yeah.
standing.
These are good problems to have and to figure out in September, like you're saying. These are not November problems that you want. That could derail a season in November.
Oh
September,
yeah.
you're all right because you're figuring it out. All
Hmm.
right, with that, let's get into our take and bake. Again, take and bake news segment. We've let our thoughts sit for a couple of days since the game. What has changed the most for you? Have any of your opinions changed? General outlook? Are there things that you're more concerned about? Start us off here. What do you think has changed for you since Sunday,
Um,
or that you feel
Nothing.
more strongly about? Doesn't even
I
have to
feel
change.
more strongly about the fact that the level of focus and execution is at a very low point.
Okay.
And that's my overall thought process when I look at these games is the level of focus to detail, um, and the ability to recognize opportunities to execute. Uh, that's that we lack the urgency there.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and because we're seeing it in pivotal moments in these games. Um, I mean, you look at the stat line, 9 penalties, right?
Yeah.
When you already come off of another game where you have penalty issues. Now we're
Mm-hmm.
just stacking the penalties again. We talk about pressure on the quarterback, 4 sacks. So 7 sacks total in 2 games. That's not going to cut it. It's a level of focus to detail and execution. Um, these types of things are drive killers. And you look at our third downs, terrible, right? We can't convert on, we basically have had the last game you had 2 drives over 5+ plays.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes to the sacks. Sacks are the number one killer of any drive. It's frustrating. That's the reason why I think so many fans are frustrated. And again, we're experiencing this, right now. Carolina Panthers, the fans here are experiencing the same things where it's like, man, like, how come we're not gaining any ground? How come we're, in and out so fast and not converting on third downs? It comes down to the sacks. It comes
Mm-hmm.
down to the turnovers. Like, we have to make sure we're taking care of the ball. The ball is the
Mm-hmm.
number one thing. And if you're not taking care of the ball, then you're leaving yourself no chance. Or at
Yeah, I
least
agree with
it gets harder.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. There's a lot of mental errors and things that you feel confident should be and can be cleaned up relatively soon. For my
Hmm.
take, I don't really have anything nearly as passionate as I did last week when I basically scolded a whole subset of the Oregon fans for not being patient. But I will say this: if you want to look at the start of Oregon season positively, you certainly can. Again, I'm not saying that things have looked great at all, but my concern meter has ticked up a little bit over the past couple weeks. I'm more concerned about this team than I was at the start of the season because we were very high on this team then. And there are things to be worried about for sure. But if you're willing to believe that the Ducks are going to figure this out, you can make the argument that these first 2 games have been beneficial. So rarely non-conference is used as a preseason where you learn nothing about your team. And, you've got blowouts, you face no adversity, you got no strain, no stress. You kind of have to wait until, week 4, week 5, week 6 to learn about your flaws. The Ducks, after these 2 weeks, they know their flaws. They know what they need to do better, and they know them well. They've had this early time in this year where the players are healthy to figure out what they need to get better at. And I think that's, if you want to look at that as a positive, I think that can be a positive. I'm not saying I'm glad that they're being tested. I'm not saying that, given a choice, I would pick this route over blowouts in the non-conference because, it's more fun for fans and it's more fun for media members to actually watch your team dominate or the team that you cover dominate. So I'm not saying this is like the path that I would choose, but this is, it's not the end of the world that this is what's happening to them early on. They're 2-0 still. They got everything that they want in front of them. This can be looked at as silver lining to the frustrating season. And another one is that they've fallen from number 3 to number 9 in the rankings over the past 2 weeks. That's not great, but you know what? That pisses these guys off, I'm sure. I know you're supposed to ignore the outside noise, all of that stuff. You know that these guys are not happy with how they're being viewed after being, propped up as national championship contenders before the season. So that kind of gives them this chip on the shoulder that I don't think they would have had, otherwise if they had.
Well, I think what it is, it's a what do you want to call it? It is a shot of humbleness, of humility. A shot of humility is what's happened to the University of Oregon Duck football team. Not that they needed it, but it's one of those things that, the blessing in disguise. Absolutely. And when you realize something like that happening to you, you can either lean in and say, I need this. And when you lean in and say you need this, you learn from it, you grow from it, you welcome the pain of seeing what you put on film, right? Like that's embarrassing, right?
Yeah.
People talking about you, they're going to talk about you. You gave them something to talk about. So if you want to be pissed off, don't be pissed off at people talking about you. Be pissed off at yourself and the thing that you did on what you put on the film. And so, and as a player, now people take things too far all the time. And so you're going to get upset when you read those comments where they're talking about, I hope your family dies and whatever, all kind of crazy stuff, right? Those are the things that get under your skin. But when you're hearing people saying, hey, the Oregon Ducks have to do better, they're not playing like a championship caliber team. That's true. It's the truth. Right now, you're not playing up to the level and standard of a championship caliber team. And that's not to say that you can't be a championship caliber team. We believed that you were pre-season. Right now, you're kind of showcasing this other thing. And maybe it's just, maybe we get the offensive line fixed and things are better. Maybe we talk to the linebacker group and say, hey, fill the gaps and defensive line, squeeze more, get in the backfield, whatever it is, be more scrappy. And, maybe it's just as little as those little fixes. And we're playing Ohio State in Oregon and we beat them. Or it's the other way around, right? We say, man, woe is me. We should be number 3 in the nation. Why they take that away from us? Like, yeah, Boise State, Idaho, yeah, we better than that. Like, we know that. And then you go and show up to Oregon State and the next game with that mentality, you're going to end up losing. So you better take this to heart and watch that film. Look at the man in the mirror, like Michael Jackson said. I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his way.
I want to ask you this. We both think that the Ducks are going to, quote unquote, click at some point this year and be the team that we thought they could be preseason. I think we both have that some pretty good confidence that they are going to be a good team at some point. When do you think that is? Do you think we see that in week 3, in week 5? Is it in week 7 versus Ohio State? Do you not think we see that team until later in the year? What kind of timeline do you expect or project on this team if you had to put one?
I will say that there is an importance on peaking, right? We don't want to peak now. I don't want to be a team that's playing at the highest level that they can possibly play. I don't want to see that right now. That would scare me because you can't possibly play at that peak
You just
for
can't maintain that. It's not
the
sustainable.
length of this season. In the NFL, we always say peaking around getting to that point where you're starting to peak around week 15, like that's a good space,
Like
a good spot.
like
14,
mid-December, right?
15. Yeah, like where you're wearing teams down. You might get some guys off of IR that were banged up, injured, and now your team's starting to really feel the strength while everyone else is starting to wither away. Those are the moments where you can really say to yourself, okay, we got this. Okay, we are actually a really good football team. And so I think we should be making progress every week. And one of the things also too, you'll always realize, the biggest growth in performance from week 1 and week 2.
Yeah.
The scary part here is we didn't really see too much growth from week 1 and week 2 with the Oregon Ducks.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because Boise State is actually better than what we give them credit for. And maybe it's the reason why we don't want to talk about, which is maybe we're not as good as what we think, right? So and maybe I don't know, man. There's a lot of maybes and a lot of what ifs and a lot of hopes, but only thing we can speak right now is the way they're playing is good enough to win against Boise, but it's good enough to get beat by
Needs to be better.
Ohio State. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. All right, before we switch gears to Oregon State, let's introduce a new segment for the NFL season. I'm calling this segment Flying with the Pros. I want to look at some of the weekend's action in the NFL, and each of us kind of highlight a few pro Ducks who stood out and deserve mention. Are there any guys that really caught your eye, former Ducks that were in the NFL this weekend?
Yes, Bucky Irving.
Yes. Thought you'd bring this one up.
My man, he had 11 carries or 9 carries for...
I think 9 carries for 62. Yeah.
Yeah, and I saw one of the runs and a highlight, and I mean, he showed his burst. I mean, he hit the hole, it was wide open, but for him to actually hit the edge and bounce off of a guy and basically make his presence felt, and I just loved how his sideline embraced him on this run that he had, and he's in a really good. He's on a good team. Baker Mayfield, the way he's playing right now is lights out, and I'm so happy for him. He was with the Carolina Panthers at one point and didn't really get a shot, and basically, people chalked it up to his career being over. And then he bounces around a little bit, ends up in Tampa, and he's balling out of control. And Bucky Irving is going to be able to reap that benefit. The way he is able to run the ball and his explosiveness is going to be very fitting when it comes to being a dual threat. So I'm super happy that he's in that spot. Yeah. But I hope they don't do well against the Carolina Panthers.
We'll see. I think everyone's going to do well against the Carolina Panthers. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
That's for a different podcast, though. I want to highlight DeForest Buckner. He had 6 tackles, 1.5 sacks, 2 QB hits against Houston Texans and CJ Stroud. Man, I mean, we've come to expect
a monster
from Buckner. He's so good and one of the best defensive linemen in the whole NFL. So it's not a surprise that he has that stat line, but man, he's a really good player. I'm so happy that he's a former Duck.
Yeah, there's quite a few Ducks in the NFL right now, doing their thing, and it's really good to see, how many guys that have made it to the NFL, but also making an impact in the NFL. I mean, Bo Nix had a showing this weekend. It wasn't as pretty as what people would have expected, but shoot, I mean, he put up a good showing. Did you see
the Bo Nix stat, the speed stat?
What was the speed?
I found this Next Gen Stats. According to Next Gen Stats, Bo Nix was the fastest quarterback in the NFL this week, reaching 20.05 miles per hour, which was faster than faster than Saquon Barkley, Aaron Jones from Minnesota, and Washington quarterback Jaden Daniels. So it's like,
wow.
all right. I know he didn't put out the stats he wanted. He didn't get the win.
But you got the fastest player award.
Because that's not what he's known for either. I mean, that's obviously he doesn't care at all about that stat or that accolade, whatever you want to call it. But
yeah,
I thought that was interesting. It's like, all right, Bo can run. We know that.
Yeah, I liked his run into the end zone. It was very nonchalant.
Yeah. Yeah, and we know Bo's going to get back to work and use this as motivation. So I've got no worries about him. All right, let's switch gears to Oregon State. The Beavers obviously are 2-0 this year, wins over Idaho State and San Diego State. Real quick, gambling corner, courtesy of our guys at Bet Online, to start this off. Oregon minus 16. Oregon money line is minus 705. The Oregon State money line is plus 525, and the over-under set at 50. I'm not going to lie to you. I am throwing my hands up in the air on this. I'm staying away from this one because we have both been so unbelievably wrong over the last 2 weeks that I don't feel like we even deserve the right to give gambling advice anymore. So I'm just staying away. I feel like I have no read on this game when it comes to point spread. I mean, I feel like I could take the money line and feel confident, but obviously it's minus 705. Over under, like I just don't know. I don't know. Do you have any sense for this game?
I don't. And only because who they've played, right? They haven't really played. They played San Diego State, and they played the Idaho State Bengals.
Idaho State, yeah.
And those games were, they beat San Diego. They didn't score,
21-0,
yeah. But I would have to just say that we have to tread lightly here. We have to tread lightly.
And we don't know what Oregon State is. We don't really know what Oregon is. So it's not a good feeling to not know what this team's going to do.
I feel like Oregon State can score. Looking at their running back, Griffin, he has 250 yards rushing, basically 3 touchdowns. So
they've got 2 running backs that are really good.
They bank on running the ball and being physical. And so we just came off of, playing against arguably the best running back in the nation. I don't think we're playing against any of the top 10, top 25 backs in the nation. So we should be able to stop the run. And if we can stop the run, we'll give ourselves a shot at, getting them off the field. And, if Oregon figures out how to just consistently run the ball, I mean, they ran the ball pretty well. Jordan James finished with over 100 yards rushing this past game. So they definitely tried to run the ball more than they did than week 1. But this, to me, is a game that you got to set the tone. This is Oregon State. It's always going to be Oregon State. If you're playing Oregon State, it's always going to be that game. And it's a battle that you should take pride in, and you should treat this game like you're playing Ohio State. You should treat every game like you're playing, like it's the most important game because it's the next game. So I don't know, man. I will say I'm putting my betting hat on, my legit betting hat on, like as if I had, looking at this like a investment deck.
I think I'm gonna fade this opinion on yours based on what we've said so far this year. So tell me what you're gonna do. I'm going the opposite.
I'm going to go. We're gonna win.
Yeah. Okay.
We're gonna win.
But it ain't gonna
be by. But it's gonna be by like 10 points.
Okay, I'm officially hammering Oregon minus 16 then. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm going to say we're going to win by 10 points. I'm going to say this is going to be a 31-21 game.
31-21. Okay. Let's forecast this game a little bit. Let's do a little bit of a duck forecast. Break down a couple of things that we want to see out of this game in week 3 and give, one prediction for what we ultimately think we will see in this game. What do you have for like a game day wish that you really want to see from this team?
No sacks.
No sacks. Yeah, man, that'd be awesome, wouldn't it?
No sacks. And I'm putting that on the quarterback too. You know, it's
Absolutely.
not just the offensive line. If you recognize a coverage, you recognize, movement at the second level, you gotta, do some pre-snap reads and figure out the protection and understand where your outlets are and understand where your escape routes are in the pocket.
And
Get used to throwing on the run a little bit, So hoping we get no sacks, because if we get no sacks, then we'll be able to keep the ball in our possession and convert on third downs more frequent, and it'll just be a different ball game.
I think for me, I want to see both levels of the defense play a good game cohesively. We saw against Idaho, the front seven did incredibly well. They held them to 49 rushing yards. The secondary had a couple of holes. I mean, it wasn't a bad game, but if there was a weak spot of the defense against Idaho, it was probably the secondary. It was a complete opposite against Boise State. The secondary was elite with some big plays and big moments, but the front seven got gashed by Ashton Jeanty, obviously, which, you're going up against maybe the best running back in the nation. It's going to happen sometimes, but I just want to see a really good game from both of these units at the same time in both those levels of the defense, and have them just kind of really just shut someone down for once. I say for once, like it's been more than 2 games, obviously, but I just want to see a really dominant performance from the defense.
Yeah.
Do you have any other wishes for this game before we get to predictions?
My next wish, I want to see like consistent drives, back to back. I want to see a back to back scoring drives.
I don't feel like that's a big ask. Like it seems like a wish, but goddamn, like if we go back to the 2023 Ducks or the 2022 or the 20, that happens every game. Like, why are we? Yeah, I don't know. We could get into all of this stuff, but yes, I think that would be great to see. That would be very encouraging to see, and we should see it
back to back.
Yeah, little Drake. I think my other wish, I want to see them find an offensive line rotation and stick to it. No more 11 combinations. Maybe you move a couple of times if you have to, but man, find something that works and just make this offensive line thing no longer a story. I don't want to be talking next week going into the bye week about, what are they going to do after the bye? Who's going to be at right guard? Who's a left guard? Who's this? It's like, man, just find something that works and stick with it.
Just do it.
You have the talent, you have the coaching, just figure it out. I know it's a lot easier said than done, but this is why you guys get paid hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars as coaches to figure this stuff out.
The fans deserve to, experience wins, without feeling sweaty palms early in the season.
Wins minus anxiety sounds very nice right now. I don't think we've had that in a while.
Mental health.
Yeah, time for predictions. Give me one bold prediction for Oregon versus Oregon State.
I predict that McCoy, Oregon State quarterback, will throw 2 picks to Brandon Johnson.
Wow, Brandon Johnson, 2 picks. Okay.
Yeah.
I believe it, man. That guy is so good. I have so enjoyed watching him play. And Jabbar Muhammad, they've both been playing really well. But having Oregon with like elite safety play, that's just, we haven't had that since Javon Holland, I don't think. And
Brandon Johnson, if you're hearing this, I need you to come through. Be a ball hawk, dog. Trust your instincts.
All right, my prediction, I think Dillon Gabriel goes off in this game. He's had solid numbers so far. He's leading the Big Ten in passing so far, but I think we see him put up really big numbers. I think it's going to be, another 300 plus yards in the air. I want to say 4 total touchdowns, maybe 1 on the ground, 3 through the air. I think he's got a big game. That's what I hope. That's one of my wishes and predictions. I think we see that.
Yeah, in an earlier game too. That could be a difference maker. Waiting all day to play a football game is definitely not the best thing. You're just waiting around, anticipating all day, trying to keep your nerves calm and tamed for a long period of time throughout a day is kind of hard. So maybe this earlier game will help deal with all that.
Maybe. All right, you said your final score predictions, what, 31-21?
31-21.
Okay, I've got the Ducks 38, Oregon State 17. So I think we're kind of in the same range. It's not going to be a blowout, but I think it's going to be a comfortable win.
So they'll cover the total points, huh?
I've got them covering the total points, yeah, and I feel even better about that after you said that they won't cover. So
okay.
All right, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Again, go subscribe to the show, rate, review, all that stuff. Help us grow our audience, please. Stu, do you have anything before we get into this strange September Civil War for the first time ever?
Yeah, it's not even called the Civil War anymore.
I mean, it isn't.
You got to create a different name.
The Platypus Cup.
We'll call it the Timberline Cup.
Timberline Cup. Okay. Yeah. Something. It needs a name. I'm of the camp that it should still be the Civil War. I know there's a lot of people that are not in that camp.
The Running River Wrath.
Rivalry.
All right.
Running
River Rivalry.
We'll workshop this off air. How about that?
Yeah.
All right. You can check out more of my work at duckswire.usatoday.com. Follow me at Zachary C. Neal on Twitter. Follow Stu on Twitter at JonathanStewR1. Make sure to check out the Believe in Panthers podcast and the Stu and Crew podcast as well. For myself, Zach Neal, for my co-host, Jonathan Stewart, we will talk to you guys next week. Until then, take it easy.